What's good, everybody? I'm out here at Terry Peak in South Dakota, and I want to go over my personal favorite GoPro accessory, something I think that everybody should have in their arsenal, something that's going to make your footage look so much more cinematic and smooth. And I'm talking about ND filters today, guys. What they are, how to use them, and we'll do some side-by-side comparisons to really show that cinematic and smooth effect. Let's get to some riding. Welcome back to the channel, guys. I have been wanting to make this tutorial for a long time, and I'm finally getting around to it. So I'm excited to share it with you. So guys, what we have here is the GoPro Hero 9 with a Polar Pro ND filter or neutral density filter. And what you can imagine ND filters like are basically sunglasses or goggles for your camera lens. They're going to let less light in, and in return, you can slow down your shutter speed to create motion blur. ND filters come in a wide variety of different tints. As you can see here, I have an ND8, an ND16 filter, and an ND32 filter. Each number represents the amount of light that's going to be let through the filter. So for instance, an ND8 filter lets in 1/8 the amount of light, an ND16 lets in 1/16 the amount of light, and an ND32 lets in 1/32 of light. Typically, I like to carry an ND8 to an ND32 with me every day because I find that gives me a large enough range from a bright sunny day to an overcast day when a neutral density filter is needed. However, enough of me talking about neutral density filters. Let's go ahead and power on the GoPro and get into some settings. All right, so you guys can see here that I have my standard GoPro settings set up here. This is basically when I'm using a mouth mount or a GoPro pole, doing selfies just to get the widest field of view and whatnot. I'm at 2.7K, 60 frames per second in the super view mode. I like to have my hyper smooth boost in the top right, my ISO control in the bottom right, my field of view in the bottom left, and my shutter speed on the top left. Let's go ahead and let's hop into our settings. All right, we're in the settings. And of course, I've got a lot of options here. I like to go ahead and go down to ProTune. First thing I like to do is set up the shutter speed. And I like to use a very simple filmmaking principle called the 180-degree rule. Now what that means is basically whatever my frame rate is, I'm going to double the shutter speed. If you can recall, I'm at 60 frames per second here. And let's scroll down. Meaning I would like my shutter speed at 1/120th. Let's take a look at another example here. So I'm going to go ahead and select my video options. Instead of 60, let's go 120 frames per second because we want to slow down some of these shots in post. So we're going to swipe out of that. And I'm going to go back down to my shutter speed here. You're going to notice it kind of likes to reset back to auto, so it's something to always pay attention to after you change a setting. And I'm going to go ahead and bump that up to 240. So I do like to keep my shutter speed on the left here because I know that when you're outside snowboarding or at the peak of a mountain, conditions can change almost instantaneously. So I definitely like to have that right there so I can go ahead and adjust very quickly as to what I'm doing. Or if I do happen to change my resolution, things tend to go right back to auto. And you'll see here that I'm on auto again. So I would want to go ahead and adjust accordingly to 1/120th if I'm shooting at 60 frames per second. And now that we have our shutter speed dialed in, utilizing the 180-degree rule, let's go ahead and take a look at our ISO, our sharpness, and our color profile. And I like to change up my ISO next. I like to keep my max ISO very low because these cameras tend to get a little bit noisy in low light conditions. So if you are in a situation where you want to be shooting slow-mo, you can crank up that ISO at the cost of getting more noise in your footage. One of the most important things I would recommend is turning your sharpness all the way down to low and your color down to flat. This gives you the most lenience and room to color grade in post-production on these things. So that's really it. It's pretty simple, guys, to set these things up to utilize an ND filter. You just want to make sure, again, that you're basing your shutter speed off of that 180-degree rule. All right, so we've got our GoPro ProTune settings all set up and dialed in, utilizing our ND filter and a slower frame rate. Let's go ahead and pull up some side-by-side footage comparing the GoPro Max with full auto settings, the point and shoot settings, compared to the ProTune settings on the Hero 9 with an ND filter. All right, we've got our GoPro Hero 9 on the left utilizing an ND 16 filter and our GoPro Max on the right in full auto settings. And immediately you're gonna notice the GoPro Max is very saturated, very sharp. Everything always seems to be in focus and it almost gives a sense of pixelation. Whereas on the left, the GoPro Hero 9 with the ND filter makes you kind of feel like you're traveling at light speed. Movements seem a lot more natural and things are just smoother. So both cameras are set up in their super view mode. However, the GoPro Max is set in max super view, and that is one advantage of the GoPro Max is it does have a wider field of view right out of the box, whereas with the GoPro Hero 9 you need to buy the max mod lens to get that wider field of view, which is great for shots utilizing GoPro poles or a mouth mount. However, you lose the ability to put a neutral density filter on and get this cinematic feel. So let's go ahead and run this back, add some color correction, and really get this footage popping. I've added very basic color correction here. Just wanted to level out my exposure, add a little bit more vibrance and saturation, as well as sharpness. Again, it's so much easier to color correct footage when you're shooting in that flat color profile, as well as the low sharpness in your GoPro settings. But as you guys can see, with the help of ND filters, you can get your shutter speed slower, create that blurred effect, and it's gonna make that footage look so much smoother and so much better. And as always, guys, if you did enjoy this tutorial, please make sure that you like, comment, and subscribe. I'll be bringing you more GoPro tutorials, and I'll be covering the GoPro Max next. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you out on the slopes.